Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Brave Purpose Podcast. Thank you for joining me today. My name is Anisa L. Wesley. I am your host. I'm the best-selling author of the book, Please Excuse My Brave, Overcoming Fear and Living Out Your Purpose. And here in my podcast, we're talking about how to live bravely in your life. And so in season 2 of this podcast, we're starting to have guests who I believe are living out their purpose and who have a lot to share in regards to encouragement and even maybe some strategies that you can use to live out your own purpose. And so I'm going to have one of my friends, my close friends actually, come on today to talk about what that means, her purpose. Her name is Francia, and she is a CEO, first of all. Okay. She is also a mental health therapist. She does all things motherhood and all things self care. She is just an amazing person. So I'm going to bring her on, and she is going to talk more about what she does and who she is. And then we'll get into some of the questions that I have for her. So here we go. I'm going to bring you on right now. Let me see. Let me do that one. There we go. Hello. I think you're on mute still. Maybe a little lag. Hi, welcome. I briefly introduced you.
I unmuted.
I briefly introduced you, and I would like for you to, if there's anything you would like to say, introduce yourself. Maybe I forgot something. I don't
know. Thank you. No, you put everything in there. I appreciate the warm welcome. So my name is Francia Telesford. All the things that you mentioned, and yeah, I'm a therapist, a social worker, and a business owner that hopes to promote self-care and motherhood. A wife, a believer, a mom. So thank you for having me.
Yes, I forgot the most important thing: a believer, a wife, the mom. So yeah, thank you for sharing those things, because those are definitely important. Okay. So I'm going to start to ask you some questions that I want you to, take some time to think about. I sent them to you ahead of time, but still, you have time to think about them. And the first question is, what do you believe your God-given purpose is?
Pardon me. So that's a good question, because I feel like we're always kind of trying to find our purpose, even when we find it, then sometimes it might change, especially like as a mom and in motherhood and all of that. But for me, I think I know my God-given purpose has always been to help people, to support people, to just kind of be like a safe space for people. I think early on, I kind of always was that person that people would just come to and like tell me their problems. And, surprise, surprise, ended up becoming a social worker and a therapist. But I think just God just put it in me to have the spirit of empathy for others. So just to be able to understand and kind of just kind of like walk with people, like even sometimes, you know, I well, not sometimes, a lot of times I'm the person that will kind of notice people's like facial expressions, like their body language, stuff like that. So I'm just always analyzing. And on the one hand, it can be something that feels like heavy, but on the other hand, I think God made it for me to carry it because um, just having connections with people feeling safe enough to talk to me about what they're going through, and then also me, um, just having that relationship with God to try to just do my best, not like be anybody's savior or anything like that, but um, be that comfort. So, I think just even the things that I went through, like as a teenager and stuff like that, kind of set my purpose up. So sometimes, I would have different things that I would be going through, with family, and I would just wonder like, why am I going through this? And it wasn't until, later on that I realized, okay, you went through that so that, you could be this person who you are as an adult, to be able to be empathetic to others, and yeah, just to listen, to help people feel seen and heard, and um, just offer a safe space. So I think that's what my God-given purpose is.
Wow. So I love what you said. And I love the part that stuck out to me is how, one, I knew you're self aware, first of all, because you're a therapist. I know. Well, not all therapists are self aware, but that's a whole other conversation for another day. But, but the fact that you're able to look back at your history and say, you know what, these things that I went through were preparing me for my purpose. And I think that that is such a profound thing that some people may not be able to quite conceptualize yet. Um, and I want to get back to that question. Um, but first, I want to ask you what made you or what initiated you into wanting to live out this purpose? And from what I'm hearing, it sounds like you want to just be a person that sees other people, which I believe you do a great job of as my friend. And, you want to be that empathetic light and person that is there for people, is able to hear them out. And I think that that can even cover all aspects of your life, whether that's wife, mom, business owner, and therapists with mothers. And I think that that really does encompass a lot of who you are. But what made you begin to do that? Like, where did that start?
Um, so my earliest memory, so even when I was thinking about this question, it also made me think about my oldest daughter. Um, she's 9 right now, but I can remember her being under 2 years old and being that kid in preschool where the teachers would come up to me and be like, "Oh," like there was an example, one of the teachers was sick and then they were gone for a couple days and she came back and they remember my oldest coming up to them and being like, "Oh, are you okay? You were sick," and stuff like that. So like she's had that in her, so I can remember that from her, and even just how she interacts with her friends now. So I was trying to think for myself, like, what's my earliest memory of um, kind of like being empathetic, like being like a helper, and it was kind of hard to pinpoint because I feel like I've always just been like a friend to others. But what made me, I think, really start to kind of hone in to go into that path, I would say high school when I was a teenager and I was kind of just going through just like some family trauma. So maybe I would say that so when I was 10, my parents separated, but I, always still had a relationship with both of them. But I would say teenage years is when I really started to feel like, I was like suffering, like I wasn't seen, I wasn't heard, and stuff like that. And it just, as I think about it now, I think that's why I do have the heart to listen, because I wasn't seen and I wasn't heard in some ways. And I feel like that's a lot of our stories for those of us that are social workers and therapists and helpers. We end up being helpers because, in a certain way, um, we don't want people to feel like how we felt. And so I do have an early memory in high school. Um, and I learned about psychology, and I was like, "Oh yeah, I think I want to be an adolescent psychologist." And I took my first psychology class, and just learning like the very very basics, that you would learn in high school. And so that I think started my path, and then I started looking into, okay, what's the best psychology school? And so my path started out me wanting to help youth, and then it I did help youth, so I ended up being a clinical counselor for foster youth, for former foster youth, and then it just transitioned into motherhood. As my journey into motherhood started, and all that. But it's always been um, in that way. So I've started, with foster youth, with homeless, and always just kind of been in the helping space. Helping the underserved and stuff like that. But I think it just my earliest memory would be from high school, and just like I just want to help people not to feel bad. So yeah.
Wow, that's amazing that it started so young, like in high school, and you found this interest in psychology, and you were like, I'm going to be an adolescent psychologist, right? So young, and I think that's so cool how we kind of have an inkling of what our purpose is, even that young, like, and a lot of times it does come from things that we did not receive. I like that you said that as well, and that's definitely my story too. Things that you did not receive of, whether it was from parents or whether it was experiences you had in school that maybe, left you feeling a certain way, or you saw something and you're like, that doesn't look right. I want to, I want to help in that area, or you find out that you're passionate about something, and so I think that that's really, really cool that you were able to kind of like develop that over time. I want you to, we have a couple more questions here, but I want you to talk a little bit about what led you to start your business, Grace Lamp Wellness, and tell us a little bit about what it is that you do with Grace Lamp.
Okay. Thank you. So Grace Lamp Wellness is, I feel like it's been living in my heart and soul for years. So I started my business because I ended up having postpartum depression with my second daughter. With my first, I didn't have postpartum depression. I had lactation issues. Because of that, then I started, when I was pregnant with my second, I was like, okay, I'm gonna be a lactation counselor. So I was studying to get certified in that while I was pregnant. So it's almost like, yeah, the things that I suffered in, I'm like, okay, I need to help others in this, because there's no reason for me to suffer this way, even though I did. There's a testimony behind that. But and it's okay to suffer, I feel, but if we can make others suffer a little bit less, then I think that we should. So Grace Lamp Wellness, um, it just I just thought about the things that I felt during that time. Some of the things I don't remember, quite honestly, because there is a fog that kind of happens when you have postpartum. So mine was more postpartum anxiety, where I just felt like just really scared about a lot of things. And for me, mine manifested in, maybe too much information, but I share it anyway. Like I didn't want to shower. Like I wasn't showering, or I was, but just not. I wasn't showering every day. I was just like, okay, I need to take care of my baby. Something's gonna happen. And I'm a believer. I have a husband. I've done this before. I was a second time mom, and being a social worker and a helper. So it just was really shocking for me, I guess. But then I guess not shocking. So I know what led up to it. Um, I had a traumatic recovery with my second C-section, and there were some things going on with our baby, nothing like too serious or anything like that, but she had an umbilical hernia, there was thrush, there was all these things. But Um, but I think just not feeling healed and then having to take care of my baby and my oldest, and then I'm a wife as well. It was a lot. So um, thinking about the darkness that I felt during that time, I wanted things to feel the opposite of that. So I wanted a space where I could, create items that were like aromatic and bright. So everything that's the opposite of what I felt during those not so great times. So I make vegan soaps, I make vegan body butters, and everything smells really aromatic and it's bright and it's like feminine, and it's just um, my way of saying, okay, the even if you don't have like an hour to go get a massage, or you can't afford a therapist right now, whatever it is, at least you can take a mindful shower, take 5 minutes, and smell that aroma. Okay, let me um, put some body butter on. Let me take care of myself in this small way, because a lot of times I would also do I call it the mom shower, where you're just like, okay, I got to do it quick. I got to take care of the next thing, for my baby. Um, so with Graceland Wellness, I was like, okay, I want to make some mommy wellness boxes where the idea that someone would gift this to someone. I thought about what would I have liked to receive at that time. Not that it would solve my postpartum depression and anxiety, but just to be thought of and to be reminded, like, take care of yourself. So that's why there's always a journal in there, that speaks to me as a therapist. You know, um, Talk about your feelings. If you can't talk about them, write them down, stuff like that. So that's why it's so close to my heart. And it just kind of ties into everything that I do. So I do maternal mental health therapy, the lactation, and the products. So they all kind of go together as part of Graceland Wellness.
Wow. So I mean, thank you for sharing your story and some of those vulnerable parts too, because I know that is not easy to do sometimes. Even though you moved past it and you found a way to heal from it, um, from the postpartum and things of that nature, and that led you to your making your business. And I honestly, I love your products. I keep buying them, so I love your products, and I believe that you're so right, because I've been noticing that I'm taking mom showers too, like just trying to, and then go back to the baby. But I think it is so important for mothers, especially, to have that space to be like, I'm worthy of having this body butter. I'm worthy of taking this shower, and so I think that that's super like important to for us as moms to remember, but also me, and as a new mom, you as a veteran mom, and I'm just like, I am thinking of a lot of people that I've talked to who who sacrifice their shower or sacrifice their own self-care in order to take care of the baby. And so I think that that is like more common than we think, right? But I don't think it has to be that way. And so I'm wondering, um, what would be your advice or your encouragement to someone who may be maybe they're not in postpartum depression, but maybe they feel like they're about to head there? What would be something that you would say to encourage them?
So for someone who may be on their way there, or they're there already, they're not sure. The one thing I would say is, don't worry about the label. Like, and even as a therapist, I'm gonna say, don't worry about taking the assessment. Like, do I have postpartum depression? Like, a lot of people want that like confirmation, but it's like, if you're not feeling like yourself, then that means that you deserve some support. So whether that be, you know, going and signing up and getting a therapist, or which would be great, but also want to be mindful of, not everybody's able to access that. But at bare minimum, letting the people around you know, so whoever is your support system, let them know, hey, I'm kind of going through some stuff. I'm going to need some help. Um, and just kind of like taking the shame out of it, the fact that you don't feel your best. Um, my husband is very supportive. We go to a supportive church, all that stuff. But and like I said, I was a mom already. So the idea is like, oh, you've done this before, like you're good, right? But I felt so embarrassed to like tell my husband that like, hey, I think I have some postpartum. I felt like, it's really important for me to be a good mom, and I don't want to like let myself down. I don't want to let him down. And but it was the best thing to do because your partners need to know what's happening. Your husband needs to know, the child's father needs to know what's happening, because that way they can support you. And sometimes they may not really understand, and that can be just a gender difference. Like men handle things differently than women do in general. But even if they can't fix it, at least they're aware. Your family members, having them be aware. I wish I would have said something more to, some of my family members. I feel like I told my husband's mom later on, and she was like, "What?" Like, "Oh, And if she had known, and she was very supportive as well in general, just with the kids. But I think if I would have talked about it a little bit more, then I could have gotten even more support. So, and for those who don't have anyone, like I said, journaling it, being, like saying out loud or writing down and acknowledging, okay, I feel like this, instead of pushing it down. um just I tell people all the time, like, there's the emotion wheel, and we have to experience like every part of it. You can't experience happiness without acknowledging the other parts of the emotion wheel, so sadness, like all the different things. So my biggest advice, don't push it down. If you have someone that's around you that's supportive, share it with them. If you don't, at least acknowledge it to yourself. Do more things for yourself. So, like that 5-minute mom shower, make it 6 minutes. And then maybe the next time you can make it 7 minutes, 8 minutes, stuff like that. I used to write myself post-it notes, write yourself little post-it affirmations, whatever you can do to, just acknowledge that, hey, I'm suffering, um, but I'm going to be okay. So, yeah.
I love that you said, even though they might be suffering, they're going to be okay. And I think that that's a wonderful thing to remember. Like, even in our suffering, and I think we could even go as far as believers to know that God is with us in our suffering. And because we know that, even though we are experiencing that pain, we know that at some point we're going to be on the other side of it if we continue on. And so I think that that's so, um, good to remember. And thank you for giving that free advice. Come on. So, so thank you for giving that. And I'm gonna move on to the other question that I had, but I just wanted to get that from you because I know there might be someone watching who may need that, right? So I know when I first had the baby, I went through, I guess, what they call the baby blues. I don't know, exactly. I just felt really sad. I think it's because I hadn't been outside for like a week. But, even that can start to, you just don't feel like yourself, like you were saying. And it can make you feel like, you're drowning almost, like you don't know what to do. And I think it's so important to remember that we all deserve support. We all deserve to have 5 minutes to ourselves or more, right? And finding out and not feeling guilty about that as a mother as well is hard, but it's needed because without us being fully ourselves, without us being our tank being full, we're not going to be able to pour into our children and really take care of them the way that they need to be taken care of, or whatever hat people have, right? If they're not a mom, if it's work or if it's school, whatever it is, if you're not 100% yourself, you cannot give out what you don't have. And so it's important to get the support that we need. And so, but I'll move on to the next question because I can keep going and going, and we can keep going and going because we do. But I'm gonna try to be good today. So, um, the question that I have specifically is, what is one of the fears that you had to overcome to get you to where you are today?
Um, so one of the fears, I would say that I had to overcome and still have to overcome, is just maybe the fear of not being good enough, um, like that imposter syndrome that shows up sometimes, um, and also the fear of not being heard and seen, so that goes back to my childhood. So I can meet someone and it has nothing to do with them, but it's just something that I constantly have to work on. So um, even though you're in therapy or you're a therapist or you're a helper, that doesn't mean that your life is just like, oh, I have everything figured out. So um, just the fear of, that sense of like, oh, will I be good enough to help that person? Like, am I really going to help them? And one thing that I've found is that people, just going back to the heard and seen thing, people just want to be seen and heard. You don't have to be, um, the person who wrote um, like all the theories from all our psychology books and, all that stuff. You have to be the person that's showing up, and so showing up for yourself, just like you mentioned, having self care and all of that. I can't show up for people if I'm not taking care of me. And so, getting out of that fear of like, oh, will they be okay? Like, um, you know, the need to do more when actually you're just enough. You're someone that's in front of that person that is listening to them, being there for them, and it could be anything else. So whatever your profession is, um, you're great at it. You know what I mean? Motherhood, all those things. A lot of times, it's just quieting that voice in our own head. So that's the loudest voice. So we think maybe sometimes that others will have something to say about what we are doing. And if they do, that's okay. That's their opinion, that's their whatever. But um, the biggest fear, I think, is just that internal sense of not good enough and just pushing that out and reminding yourself, like, actually, I'm pretty great at this. I've been doing this, for a while. Or even if you just started doing it, there's a reason that God called you to do whatever it is, and there's some things, just like we mentioned, like I was always a helper. That was before I even went to school to be a helper. So it's like there's things that are in you. And so I love that you're bringing this topic up of, using your God given gifts or reminding yourself, like, oh, actually, God put this in me. Okay. And I'm his daughter, I'm his son. So why am I doubting myself when, just like if you're a parent, you believe in your kids so much. So how much more does God believe in you? So you should believe in yourself. So that's my answer for that one.
Wow, I mean that is a great answer. I mean, why these are things that you are gifted with. I think as Black women, especially, I can speak for myself and a few others that I know. Imposter syndrome is really something, right? And I think you explained how to kind of overcome it very well. Like you have to remind yourself that you are qualified. This is your purpose. This is something that you're good at. This is something that you've been doing for years. You belong here. I think that's something I say to myself like a lot. I belong here and I can do this. I'm doing well. And I have people like Francia to remind me that I'm doing well too, and other people in my life. But you need that sometime as well. but you have to, it has to come from your within for you to remind yourself. So I love that you are saying that. And of course, remembering that God called you, and he called you before you had a lactation license or whatever, other hats that you wear. He called you to be the mother of your two beautiful girls before you even thought about them. And so just remembering the things that we are called to, and that we are gifted in, or we are purposed in, it's it doesn't matter if we are doing, I won't say if we're doing our best. We should try to do our best. But even if we're not feeling our best, or even if we're feeling like an imposter, we have to remember that we are not, and we belong, and we got this, and so to speak. And so I love that you broke that down for us. My final question is, how would you encourage someone who is struggling to live out their purpose? Like maybe they're struggling to figure it out, or they know what it is, but they have that fear and it's holding them back.
Um, so for someone who, maybe has an idea of what their purpose is, but they have the fear that's holding them back from doing it and starting it. My biggest advice is just do it. Um, don't feel like you have to have all your ducks in a row, like you have to um, compare yourself to somebody else who's maybe doing something similar, or even if it's something like brand new and no one's done it, that's in your family or in your group, and you're worried that, like, oh, okay, how is this going to be received? This is something new, this is unique. Just do it. The biggest advice I would say I got, just in even starting my business, was from my husband. Because like I mentioned earlier, like I had this in my soul for a while, but I was just like, I'm a social worker, like I'm a helper, I'm not a business person. Um, so that like kept me back. And but I had these like visions of these wellness boxes, and my husband was just like, just start. Like just make some, and that's it. You don't have to have a website yet. You don't have to have, just make some. And so my biggest advice is to take what's out of your heart and your mind and just put it out there. Um, because you can always start again, you can always reframe it. There's so many companies that have been around for like so long, and they start with a prototype, right? And nobody says anything about like, oh, uh, I don't know what example to use, like the first Toyota, like, oh, that first Toyota was terrible. Like they're not looking at that. It's like they had to start. And so for someone who maybe is trying to figure out what their purpose is and doesn't really have a clear vision, I would say just do different things. Um, have fun, do what you're called to do, like what, if there's an interest that kind of like shows up, you don't know if that's your passion, try it out. Even for me with being a social worker and a helper and a therapist. So I knew I wanted to be, like I mentioned, an adolescent psychologist. That's how I started out. But when I went to college, I started out and I did volunteering with the homeless who were adults. But that was my first sense of doing social work and stuff like that. And I loved it. And then I ended up working with the homeless and with youth, for a long time. But if I hadn't have tried that, I wouldn't have confirmed like, oh, this is really what I'm supposed to be doing. And then you could try something and then realize, oh, that's not really for me. So even in like graduate school, I loved how they usually would put you into something that was the opposite of what you said that your interest was, because a lot of people ended up trying something new and realized, oh, actually, I really want to do that, or I'm called for this. So I guess just the biggest advice all around is just try it. You literally have nothing to lose. If you don't try it, if you don't put yourself out there, then you'll never know. And just pray about it, whatever you're doing. Pray for discernment, and just pray for grace for yourself, and just as you're going through the process, just to be gentler to yourself as you're trying to figure things out.
Yeah, wow, that's really good advice. I think it's so easy to be like, I don't know where to start. And I think that holds so many people back from just doing something. And I love that you just said, just go for it, just try it. The very first episode of this podcast will start before you're ready, right? Because that's what I did. I started the podcast before I was ready, and it you go. A lot of times you don't know what you're doing, or maybe you don't have a lot of resources, but you have what you have in your hands. And like you said, you kind of, I love how you put it so beautifully. You are taking what you put it way beautiful than I'm about to, but you take what's in your heart and you just put it out there. And so I love that kind of description of something that you definitely know, you feel like you had those wellness boxes and you were just like, they're in my heart. And your husband was like, just start, just do it. And sometimes we do need that kind of kick in the butt, like, hey, what are we stalling for? And I think there's tons of reason why we could be stalling, right? Like fear of rejection, fear of failure, or fear of success. There's some people who are afraid to succeed, right? Because what does that look like? That's so different. And so I think that it is scary to start, but we have to remember that if this is truly something that we're called to do. Like, imagine if you didn't start Graceland Wellness and the lives that you're touching now, you wouldn't be able to touch in that same way. And so I think that when we hesitate on or allow the fear to stop us, that's actually the enemy, like stopping us from doing the good work of God, like what He's calling us to do. And we're actually hindering other people from getting what they need from us as well. So our purpose is oftentimes, most honestly, all the time, it's always about somebody else. And of course it's about us and our growth through it, but it's always about someone else and who we're reaching through our purpose. And so thank you for sharing that. And I know somebody is going to find that encouraging, is going to find that helpful. And hopefully this gives them the encouragement, the fire that they need to get started. Like, we're going to see more podcasts started, more businesses, just because you came on here today and were able to share your heart on that and your just honest, kind of genuine advice on how to get started. Um, and so, thank you for being here today. Was there anything else you wanted to share, like before we start to wrap up? Was there anything else you feel that you wanted to share today? And where can they find you on like social media and that kind of thing?
Yes, so I just wanted to share and say thank you for having me, and to let the people know that it was an immediate yes from me when you asked, um, that you are living in your purpose, being the friend, because you really are a friend. And the title is not, I don't take it lightly. And so you living in your purpose, it's like you're easy to talk to, you're somebody who's approachable, you're somebody who cares. And so thank you for having this space for people to feel um, heard and seen, and to feel healed, and to live in your God-given purpose, to encourage others. Um, and just, yeah, so I just want to say thank you, and also let the people know that you are who you say you are, and that you are beyond that. So I just want to say thank you for that. And make sure you guys get her book, listen to all her podcasts. Because, sometimes there's not a lot of like positive things out there for us, especially as Black women and moms. So I feel honored to be here. So thank you for having me. And then where people can find me, on Instagram, it's at Graceland Wellness. On Facebook, it's at Graceland Wellness. On YouTube, you can subscribe Graceland Wellness as well. And thank you for having me. So.
Yes, thank you for being here. And thank you for saying those nice things. I mean, I always get like, I think we fill each other's affirmation tank because, you definitely have been a friend to me as well. And we are just, going back and forth, encouraging each other. And so I just appreciate your kindness and, thank you again for the immediate yes. Because it's kind of hard to ask people to do the podcast and stuff, but you were like immediately yes. I'm like, yay. So thank you. And I'm going to just I'll put like a link or something for people to be able to find you. And that way, if they want to find Graceland Wellness products or get a wellness box for themselves or someone else, then they can do that and experience that part of self care. But I'm going to say thank you, everybody, for being here today. Thank you for watching. I hope you got something from this podcast. If you didn't, go watch it again because it's too much in it for you to have not gotten anything. And remember that you have everything you need to live your life bravely. See you next time. Bye.